Alright, so the next step is to actually add some kind of stains to, let me bust out this right here, to actually add some stains and rust coming from different parts to give it a weathered look. In order to do that, what I'll need is a texture that, well, a stain type of texture. Um, in this chapter section right here is about how to take an image like this with really strong, curvature distortion, and in a few simple minutes, turn it into a texture like this up here. So this is what we're going to start with, and this is what we'll end up with. So real simply, first thing I'm seeing is right down here I've got that white line that needs to be getting rid of. So using the C for the crop tool, crop it to right there. Probably pick my crop up just a little bit. Alright. Now, this also is upside down. So, image, rotate canvas, 180 degrees. And how I'm going to change the distortion, or correct the distortion in this image, is I'm going to use the free transform tool. So Control T, like I use very often, and also here under Edit, free transform. But in order to use free transform, notice that it was blacked out or grayed out, like I can't use it right now. The reason I can't use it right now is that the current layer that's selected is the background layer. And more importantly, it's locked. And I cannot unlock it except to double click on background, layer 0, and usually right at this time I just hit enter. And what it does is it turned the background layer into layer 0. So now, free transform and all my other transform options are turned right back on. So just real simple, I'll start out with Control T. And what I'm seeing right now is that these lines come down at a diagonal this way, and over here they come down at a diagonal this way, and there's some curvature going on, but we'll take care of this biggest diagonal first. If I pull on these points out here, what we've seen before is that actually works to scale the layer, and I'm not interested in a scale of that nature right now. In free transform node, there are other options or modifiers you can push to change the nature of the free transform. So the first one we will be using is Control, Alt, and Shift. So by holding down Control, Alt, Shift, I can now take this layer and the selection box becomes like a trapezoid. So the first thing I'm looking for right now is to make sure, like I want to keep spreading this out to ensure that these lines as a whole, or most of them in general, have the same angle. So I want to make sure that these lines aren't pointing in this direction and these lines aren't pointing in an even stronger direction. So they're all pointing about the same degree. Maybe pull them out just a little bit more. Yeah, so they're all pretty much pointing in that direction, mostly down, a little bit off to the right. What I need to do now is, I'll go ahead and hit enter, and now I will hit Control T again, and this time I'm going to turn this rectangle into, well, you'll see. So if I hold down Control and Alt, not Shift, but just Control and Alt, it's now like an off-angle parallelogram. And maybe I took this edge over here and overcorrected it too much before, so if I just hold down Control, I can bring this in just a little bit. Looks like I moved it back to the exact same space. Because I was looking at this line first, but all these others seem pretty much straightforward. So we'll go ahead and hit enter. Now the first thing I'm noticing, now that I've got all this done, so things are pretty much straight. Most of it's straight. I've still got this large curvature going on down here, which it's not a problem except for that in our castle facade, there's no curvature. There's no curvature down here. Nothing's curving inward. So I've got this little nick area right up here. So kind of zoom in a little bit. And to fix parts and not the whole thing, I want to make sure that when I'm selecting, I notice that right now the curvature for this area is starting about right here, and right when you get to about this point, it's not curving in anymore. There's a slight curve inward. Right about here, that slight curve inward stops. So we'll take that right here and Control T. So by doing a selection on this, by doing a partial selection on this layer, not selecting the whole part, I can free transform individual parts of this image. Now this is such a chaotic texture that, you know, small things like that may or may not make a difference, and you see that some of these lines aren't straight at all. But we're just going for a general feel for the whole thing. Now something that is most certainly off is right when you get to about this point, when you get to about right here, there is a definite shift. Things go from relatively straight to wowzers. And this, by the way, if I bring my mouse to the rulers up here, Control R to show ruler, Control R to hide ruler. If I drag down, starting on the ruler, I get this guide. So if I hold down M, Control semicolon hides and shows guides, by the way. Control semicolon. So now I'm going to Control T this section right here, and doing like I did before with the Control Alt Shift, just go ahead and enlarge everything. Enlarging it to the point where I make sure that everything is about the same thing. All these lines have about the same direction. They don't have to be straight yet, because that'll be the next step, but I just need to make sure they have relatively the same direction. And now if I hold down Control, I don't have to hit Enter just yet. If I hold down Control and grab the bar, not the point, but the bar, then I can shift, I can skew the bottom part. Okay, so we've got a few more lines straightened out. And we've got another area about right here. Let's go ahead and just do this again. Control Alt Shift on the point, and then Control slide the bar. Maybe that's a little bit too much with the Control Alt Shift, so I'll bring that in just a little bit. Okay, Control D. And now this area right down here, just go ahead and do this anyway. Control Alt Shift, open this up. This area down here is so skewed that it'd be really hard to correct this. Alright, so what we have right here is a straightened texture. And so one thing that I would like you to notice is that in these areas down here where we did a bunch of the stretching and the skewing, is that the method, this particular method stretches pixels out. So these areas right in here, these that are heavily distorted, these are very blurry right in here. Now if we back out enough, it's really hard to tell. But because I used a method that actually expanded the pixels, it did a bunch of stretching. And another thing to notice is that even though my canvas is really only from this top left corner down to this bottom right corner, the layer itself is much larger than this. And we know this by, or we can tell this by going to Control T and seeing that this is actually where the entirety of that layer is, right there. Another way to check this out, to find out if you have more information in your image than you are seeing, is to come down and show document sizes. And the original image was 1.32 meg, and now that it's been expanded it's 2.41. Alright, so now that I did a crop by the way, let me back up and do that one more time. So with the crop tool, which is this bad boy right there, with the crop tool I just start at the top and go down to the bottom, and I'm cropping the entire canvas size, which means that I'm not cutting away from the canvas, but I'm cutting everything outside of the canvas. And when I do that, this number goes from 2.41 down to 1.77. And now all we have to do is save this image, and then we are ready to apply it. Or let's go ahead and I'm going to crop out some of these extra areas, probably about like right here. Take this, and that is now a straight image. And to view what you've done as opposed to where you started from, the history palette is a great way to do that. Because I can click right here. Every time you open up an image, it makes what's called a snapshot. And so this snapshot says, I got this from my HP ScanJet, and this is what we started with. And as I go down my history list here, this is what we ended up with. Now if you want to make more snapshots, push this button right here, create new snapshot. So now I've got the starting snapshot and the ending snapshot. And there we are. What there's to do now is take this image. I can Control A, hit Control A, and Control C, and place it right here. Presto changeo. And we will do this in the next chapter.